Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We're excited that you're here with us live on Co-working Live with Red Worldwide. We are here today, and it's a Tuesday. Normally, we would talk about legacy on Tuesday, but today we have something else a little bit special planned because some of our members who are ministries or parachurch ministries. Some of them are pastors of churches, some of them are bishops, or they have different levels of ministry that they operate in. And we have been waiting to do a session that actually is focused on a little bit more of what they do so that we can have it in our list of things in the podcast so they can go and look at something that's really appropriate for where they are in their level of ministry. And so today we're going to really deep dive into some areas. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a presentation that I did a couple of years ago called Developing an Awareness of How Your Community Can Reach You. Promoting kingdom initiatives for kingdom outcomes. And so a lot of times we are focused on, how we can bring people into the doors and what it is that we can do as pastors or ministers, or for that matter, people who have parachurch ministries, how you can get to them, how you can touch them. But we really are going to look today a little bit deeper into this area and talk about what you can do to make it appropriate for and make it easier for people to reach you, and so let's kind of deep dive into this because I think it's going to be really important, as we are, looking at the subject of someone reaching you and seeing exactly what that means. Okay. So I know that as a church, we have been given a mandate to go into all the world and to, go there and look to make sure that we are, teaching everyone. I mean, Jesus was really clear, at the end of Matthew recorded him saying that it's our responsibility to go out and to seek the people and to baptize them and to, bring essentially the church to them. But in this particular case, there are people who do attend services or go to synagogue or go to a temple of some sort. They are coming to the house of prayer, the house of God. And we want to understand what we can do, to make this more available to them and what it is that we can be doing as people who are leaders or people who may be pastors or working in the higher levels of ministry. How do we get to the people and how do we get people to us? So let's look at some stats. Okay. These are church stats that were available within the last few years. And so this is pre-COVID on the attendance. Attendance is only, this was actually at the end of COVID when these stats were when the stats were actually posted. Okay. And so the stats are stating that attendance is only 38 to 60% of what it was pre-COVID, and so even though our doors are open and it's a little bit higher now, I can tell you that even with what we're seeing in the community, we are still looking at a situation where people are, more apt to want to go to church online, and we want to see the why. What is the reason for that? And so I want you to be thinking about this. I'm going to grab us some new stats and see what they are. Um, and I want us to kind of think about how things changed with the pandemic. Uh, what it is that made people want to stay home, why people decided that, after it was safer, that it was better for them to, just still, stay in their homes and watch TV online or participate in some other, medium that allowed them to not ever have to leave their location. And so right now we've got some stats that are coming up that's saying that on average churches are seeing about 89% of their pre-pandemic worship attendance. And these are new stats. So right after COVID, it was 38 to 60%. It's up to 89%. But even at that, it says that it does vary significantly by congregation and, for that matter, by denomination. Some churches have seen attendance decline considerably while others have exceeded their pre-pandemic levels. And, a key factor is the rise of hybrid worship, the fact that people are able to choose whether they want to be in person or whether they want to be at home, because most churches that are in the communities of our world, in terms of the people in the United States, they're offering both in-person and online options. And to give you an exact stat, it's 75% of churches are offering both in-person and online options. So while virtual attendance has helped boost overall participation, it's also led to lower engagement and giving compared to in-person attendance. So let's kind of look at why people go. What do the stats say? Well, 68% of the people go to be a better person or to become a better person. It says that 69% go to introduce faith to their kids. And I've heard this, and I don't know if anybody else has heard it, but I've heard it often, when people are getting ready to get married, they talk about, one of the things that they discuss is what it is that we're going to do with our kids, whether we will have our children attend church with me because I'm Catholic, or they're going to attend church with you because you're Muslim, or whatever the faith tradition that people have. Many times a guiding principle or decision in a marriage is how we're going to rear our children with regards to faith. Okay. And so that is a huge deal. So a lot of people do choose to go to church because they want their children to have that foundation, not necessarily because they really want to connect with God per se. Then you see 66% go to find personal comfort. That's a big deal, for people to have the emotional and visceral attachment to a place where there are other people that believe like them. Okay. And so they find personal comfort in being in a community like the church. And 81% are saying that they go to grow closer to God. Okay. That's a good number. That is a really good number. But here's the surprise. 20% of attendees don't feel any connection to God. There are people who actually go and they have no connection whatsoever to God. They just are there for something else, okay? But not because and some of them are there desiring to feel a connection to God, but they don't, okay? And then 40% of attendees don't feel a connection to their faith. And so that's a huge number. Is this what we want? So let me just open up that discussion right now. We have a few people on the line that, have some knowledge, and I'd love to be able to have some of you weigh in. I think it's really important for us to, get some experts, people who are really out here looking at, what it is that we're talking about today in terms of the stats. And so while we're, grabbing this information, I really want those who are in the audience to be thinking about, and you could put it in the chat if you like, why you started going to church. Okay. If you could answer that question. But let's see. Is there anyone in the audience that really wants to, help us to get a better perspective? Because I know we've got some stats based on millennials that just kind of blew my mind, So I don't know. Don't all jump in at the same time. Is there someone that wants to, talk about, well, what is it that you're seeing? Why do you think people that they go to church? Why do they come? Okay. Sure, jump in.
I think people go to church aside from wanting to learn or know more about God, they come to church to feel better, whether it's to feel better about themselves or their circumstances or a decision they've made, a relationship they may be in. The reasons span all across the board, but I think that's one of the reasons why people come. I think another one would be for direction. They want God to speak to them. They have things that they have put before God and uh, things that they have asked for an answer to. And a lot of times, I believe people go to church hoping and believing that they will get the answer when they go there. That the person who's ministering, or maybe somebody they might bump into, somebody God will use them to give them the answer that they need, and hopefully not just what they're looking for, because well, that's a whole other story. So
Okay. Well, you know what? I think that what you're saying has a lot of merit because I have seen and talked to a lot of people and, in talking to them about, their feelings about church and the traditional versus, the non-traditional experience. There's a lot of people who are still stuck in the this is what I've always done, or this is what my parents did, or this is what we always did as a growing up. But then I like the concept, that you're talking about where you are familiar with people who go to feel better, because that's not one of the things that came up in any of the statistics that I saw. And it very well may be the case. It just may not be something that was asked. Do you go to church to feel better? You know, yes, people said they go to church to become a better person, but they didn't talk about their feelings, and that's really important. And one other thing that I want to say about this is that there are lots of non-traditional ways that people attend, because there are people that have home churches, where there are people that get together in their neighborhood, and they have cell groups where only 10 or 12 people come together at a house and they have their service there. There's some very large congregations that are using cell groups to reignite the concept of people being in person, and so I know I see Lux Vision Studios on here, and I don't know if she wants to weigh in on this right now, but I really would love to hear your perspective because you're streaming church right now for different churches in your company. And so what are you seeing? Are you seeing people streaming from their physical location, or are they still streaming from their homes, or what's happening on your end? And you're muted. Okay, let's see. Okay, we'll come back to her in a minute because I'm not sure if if she has something going on over there. Sometimes our tech doesn't do what it's supposed to do, but if you could reach out to Lux Vision and see if you can get her attention, that'd be great, and let her know that we can't hear her. Okay. All right. So, looking to answer the question, is this what we want? I am positive this is not what we want. Okay. And so, for that reason, I want to see what it is that we can do to get to something different. So, let's answer this question. What is more important, attendance or engagement? Okay. And I want us to really focus in on this particular question because I think that, it's important, to understand that many times people um, are there just to say that they went. I went to church today. I have seen it. I've been in a position where I was in a crowd of people and we were having discussions and everybody was, talking about, what they did on the weekend. Oh, well, I went to church. It's almost like it's the trendiest thing to do, okay? To say I went to church, and it's been that way for a lot of years, but when asked, well, what did the pastor preach about? Or what did you enjoy about church today? Or, what happened in your service that you could say was notable or something that really made sense, to you in your world? What did you take away? What was your takeaway, for the day? And sometimes I've run into situations where people absolutely have no clue because they were there, but they really weren't there, if you understand what I'm saying. And I don't know if anybody else has ever experienced that. If you have these conversations along with in your circles, or if you are around people that are having these questions, but understanding that we do really have an issue where people are coming to church or going to the building where the church is gathering, but they're really not getting or having a takeaway. It's really not fulfilling them. I mean, I go back to those numbers that we looked at a few minutes ago, where it said 20% of attendees don't feel any connection to God, and 40% don't feel a connection to their faith. Why is that? What is it that's being done now that doesn't have people in a position where they actually have a connection? And so I don't know if anybody wants to weigh in on that, but this is really a problem, and it's prevalent in the communities of faith, and not necessarily prevalent in the kingdom of God, because those people who are really in the kingdom, of course, they feel a connection. And of course, they feel, the connection to their faith, and they are connected to God. But the people who are actually going to the building where we're supposed to be gathering as the kingdom, they're not having the experience that they would desire, or for that matter, that God intended, when we gather together. So let me see if anybody can weigh in on that. I just really want to see, what you all are experiencing, and if there's some questions or some concerns, or for that matter, some guiding things that might be, helpful for you to add. Okay, so let's see who we've got on the line who's going to jump in here. So I have someone that needs me to repeat the question.
My apologies. Okay, so what is more important in attendance or engagement? Oh, that's
So in other words, okay,
that's difficult.
And what you're seeing, okay, and as you are ministering different places, and as we minister, on Sunday in the local ministry where we are currently, what do you feel is more important, to have butts in the seat or to have people really involved in what's going on?
I think the engagement is more important. And I think engagement is important because engagement lets you know where people are, and at least that they're being impacted and affected by what is coming across to them. So in other words, I like, when I minister, a lot of times I like to do things interactively, and I'll ask questions and leave the floor open for people to participate, because most of the time, I'll say some people, maybe a lot of people, are accustomed to going to church and just being on the receiving end and not having to participate or give anything or anything of that nature. Or let's just take it out of the sanctuary. When you talk about engagement with other activities that commence with the ministry, maybe an outreach or something else outside of quote unquote a church service, that takes place that is still on the church property. I think engagement is probably more important than just attendance, because people can attend and everything is just going over their head. They're not really getting it. They're not paying attention or what have you. And that could be for a plethora of reasons why that may be. But I believe that the engagement is more important, with even if it's with a small group of people, as opposed to having this large group of people that's just there, but they're not there.
I agree with you. I really do agree with you, because some of the things that, people may not think about, but if we are looking at what happens actually in the Bible, okay, attendance was never really the goal. It was never the true goal of the way, the people that met with Yeshua and the people that followed him. They followed him, but he didn't go around saying, hey, everybody show up on Sunday, or for that matter, they didn't have service on Sunday anyway. They met on Sabbath, and he didn't run around asking people to show up. That was a part of a culture of a group of people who were considered to be the children of God. They met on Sabbath, in the morning, and they usually had an evening service pre-Sabbath, on preparation day, preparing themselves for what the rest that God had intended for them to have on the Sabbath day. And so, interestingly enough, going to the synagogue and having someone to sing, or they had a cantor that would sing the different songs, and they would join in. They would sing the Shema, and they would read the scriptures, and or what at that time were called the scrolls, and they would read from the scrolls or recite from the scrolls, and that was all a part of their attendance. But it wasn't a situation where they were rallying the troop. That was not the mission. The mission was to have a culture of people who were coming together for a specific purpose, to honor the God of the universe and to bring themselves in full connection with each other corporately in that honoring, and following a set of practices that were a part of that culture. And so as church attendance declines in what is being called now as post-Christian culture, I think that's really interesting, but that's what it's called. Focusing solely on attracting people to attend, I think is going to lead to a diminishing result. It's just not going to be the result that people are looking for. And I want to, bring that up, because I think that a lot of times we end up, positioning ourselves very differently, than what we should, when we are trying to we have unintended consequences of these, you know, activities and events that we put together to try to bring people, through the doors. And so I believe ministries that focus on increasing engagement through meaningful connections, and that means it could be digital tools, it could be events that happen to, add value to the children or the youth, or for that matter, that are specific, gender specific, things that are happening for the women, or things that may be happening for the men, or if we even will talk about things that are happening for different age groups. I think that those kinds of things are more of the type of involvement in the mission, the total mission of what the church should be. And I think we'll see spikes in engagements and attendance if we approach it that way. I don't know if anyone would want to weigh in on that, but I just think that it's, a lot more important for us to really focus our attention on doing more than just bringing people through the doors, or getting, as I say, butts in the seat. Okay, that's really, it fuels a deeper connection, a deeper commitment, a deeper passion when people have a sense of belonging, that we are the church, we are part of the community. And I think it will lead to increased, attendance and growth and, and engagement. So, does anybody want to weigh in on that? Do you have some ideas of other things that can be done, or things that, are important, in terms of, how do we cause people to engage more?
Well, it looks like I'm probably the only one talking today, but that's okay. I don't mind. How do we get people to engage more? I think that we do that by number one, making them feel a part of the ministry, making them feel a part of what is happening in the moment or in the event or what have you. I think when people feel like they're a part of something, then they're more apt and motivated to want to do whatever may be asked of them, or whether anything is asked of them or not. When somebody feels a part, then they're elated and delighted to lend of their skill set and their time and their talent, what they have to be able to uh, get to the end goal of the purpose of whatever their engagement is being asked for.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Overall, it appears that church attendance is still recovering, and it has not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels. But what we do know is that it is really important, that uh, everyone begins to see engagement as a priority. Certain demographics have been impacted more than others. We, are not really seeing people prioritize engagement. And, because of the fact that they lost so much in the pandemic, and even, right just after the pandemic, post pandemic, people were still, not wanting to participate. And especially now, since we have another surge of COVID, different type of COVID that has, become an issue, we're seeing people making decisions to just never go back. Okay. And so, in some of the different, types of churches. So engagement is now more important, today than it even was before. And churches are still struggling and to consistently engage people, with many viewing attendance as optional. And so that's kind of an unintended consequence of, having people attend online. Once they got online, then it's like, okay, well, it's optional. We don't have to go. Okay. The pastor will know when they see our tithes check or our offering that we were there. And that's kind of an interesting concept, but we need to build deeper connections, help people build connections to God, connections to godly people, and kingdom connections between ministries. Parachurch ministries and churches need to connect. There are different particular ministries, that where services are happening, where they even need to connect more. Sometimes we have things that we can offer each other. I've seen something that I really do like is having the ability to see ministries getting together to have services on specific Sundays, where some people will, instead of having service at their church, they will take their whole church and go to another church. And I think that things like that are really important to reinforce that we are all one body. I remember, and I was thinking about this driving home yesterday, how we used to have the 2 Sunday churches where there was only one pastor in so many counties in the part of Arkansas where I was at the time. And that was my first introduction to the concept of where people only had services on the second and fourth Sunday at one location, because that's the only day that the pastor could get there, because on the first and third Sunday, he was at another church. And so since it was only one pastor for, that and that general area. He would go to the one church on First and Third, and he would go to the other church on Second and Fourth on the other side of town, and everybody would actually come together when there was a fifth Sunday. So, they had the two Sunday churches, that's what they were called back then. And they were very effective. And in between, on the weeks where they didn't have service, the members would get together and have Bible study, or they would still have Sunday school, or some other, Baptist Training Union, or, for the Church of God in Christ, the YPWW, and the YWCC, and some of these other auxiliaries would still meet, and so I think it's really important for us to, we may not return to those days, but at least we can return to those values, having the ability to have these kingdom connections where we can link up, and be the church and not be a building, okay, with an aggregation of people in it, okay. So what can we do to foster connections to God and connections to godly people? What are some of the kinds of things that can be done to really bring together the kingdom, no matter where they're having service? And I was hoping that we would get Divine Lux Properties and Lux Vision Studios in here for a second, because I wanted to talk a little bit about something that she's been a part of, which are people who have ministry in the metaverse, so which is taking the online to another level. And there are quite a few churches in the metaverse, and I didn't even realize that there were that many ministries over there until, of course, I was going through the different metaverse worlds, and I was able to see where on Wednesday night they were having Bible study and engage in different places, and on Sunday they would have service in a different environment. And so there's lots of these particular, not just in Engage, but in Horizon World and in some of the other different worlds in the metaverse where church is going on, but what are the things that we can do? How can we help people to build deeper connections? So I want to give some ideas of what we can do to help people, when they are in a situation where it seems as though, the members or the people that are attending are not going deep. They're not building deeper connections. And I want to really center in on just a few. I don't want to have like this list of 20 things, because I know that most of you, you're just needing some, okay, what can we do right now? What are the first 3 things we can do? So let's, take a look at, where the church is lacking, and, what it is that, can be done to foster the kinds of deep connections that really matter. Well, one of the first things that we can do is we can try to foster authenticity. I believe that what I have seen in my experience over the last couple of years is that there are a lot of places in the church where we lack genuine and transparent, authentic interactions. They're just not happening. There's a mask or a facade that's there, and people, they come with these faces that are, appearing to be like everything's okay and I'm fine, everything is fine, and we're all here and I'll see you next week. But really what's happening is that people are not feeling safe enough to share their true selves, what they're really going through, and that they may need help. We are seeing a lot of high numbers in the area of suicides. And these are people who are in the church. These are not people who are, in some other type of situation where they are not attending, or they just have never come to know God. I mean, some of the people that we're seeing that are committing suicide and having some of the issues are people who are in our ministry leadership. We have seen it and it's very pervasive now, that depression is running through and through inside of the congregation. And some of the people who are having problems with depression are in ministry leadership. And so we have to make it a safe place. When people feel safe enough that they can share their true selves and share what's really happening with them, then there's an environment, that we can now begin to promote healing. And so we have to model vulnerability ourselves as leaders, and create opportunities for others to open up and to share their struggles and their stories and their experiences, and then let them know that they're valued, and that that them sharing what it is that is going on with them, as a leader, can absolutely help someone in the congregation, especially if they're sharing how they got through it. Okay. And the fact that they're still here. These are really important things. I remember when I was going through some very serious struggles at one point in time when I was in leadership in the church. I was over the dance team at the ministry where I was attending at the time. And I had a few other things that I was involved in. I was working with the women and working also at that time. I was working, with the band. I was in the choir. I had a lot of things that I was participating in the church. And one of the things that was a big deal that I was going through at the time is that my daughter had been kidnapped. And I was in all of these ministries and I was flowing through all of these places and I was hurting. And I don't know if anyone really understood the level of hurt that I was experiencing at the time. And there was really no place for me there wasn't a venue inside of some of the areas in ministry that I was working for me to really even have that conversation. Sure, I could have made an appointment, and I did make an appointment for counseling with the pastor or counseling with the pastor's wife and the evangelist at the time who was over that department. But some of the things that I really came to understand later, things that I really could have used, now we have employed in the things that we're doing in ministry, but it was just not there at the time because they didn't know what to do. It was kind of like, well, what do you do when somebody's child has been kidnapped? How do you minister to them? What do you say? Or, how do you help them fill that void? How do you help them, really get in touch with their true feelings? Because at that time, and I shared this with some other people on the line when I was doing on someone else's podcast, that I didn't cry hardly. I mean, I didn't cry at all except the day that it happened, all the way until the day before they got her. The FBI found her, and I was able to go and get her. That is a crazy thing. What was going on with me that I could be emotionless, and at one point I chalked it up to, well, God was really helping me, and I was really found it, and I was peaceful and all of these things. But when I really look back at it, I was really numb a lot of that time. Some of the time, yes, the Holy Spirit was really doing his work in me, and he really did, cause me to have the ability to be, to rest in him. But then there were some times when I was just numb and I couldn't really I couldn't even think about what I should be feeling, about the situation. And when my daughter came home, I was able to better deal with it. And I had a friend who was a psychologist. And here's the interesting thing. Outside of the church, I was able to get better help for where I was at that time than I was able to get inside of the church. Why is that? Why was that? Is it that it's not, I don't believe it was that we didn't have the assistance inside of our ministry. I just believe that something inside me would not let me ask, wouldn't allow me. And I don't know whether it was pride or what it was, but I just could not connect. And so how do we foster connections to I connected to God. Because I expressed myself to him in prayer. And, when I laid on that floor at church that Sunday on the stage, we had just danced and I was laid out there and I told him, I'm tired of this. I said, Father, this does not make sense. I serve you with everything in me. And why is it that this is happening to me? And why did this happen to my child? And the very next day, okay, is when I got the phone call saying that they knew where she was. I needed to have the get to where she was so that they could put her into my custody because they were getting ready to take the person that had her in custody. And that was a really interesting set of circumstances. Now, here's the thing I will say, though. My pastor weighed in immediately, and he paid for tickets with his points. And I mean, he had his secretary making arrangements. And so they were there for me to help. And I didn't even have to ask when it came to that part. But the part that I really think that we, as people who are in the faith, need to pay attention to is that we've got to be able to foster that authenticity and the vulnerability so that people know that they can ask, that there is a way for them to ask for help. Okay, two more things and then we're out. Asking meaningful questions. We have to be able to initiate in-depth conversations by asking thoughtful, probing questions that allow people to reveal more about themselves. No, this is not getting into somebody's business. This is helping to build trust and intimacy and in relationships, okay? And so there are things that you can do to help prompt people to share the meaningful moments and experiences that shape their faith that also can be there to shape other people's faith. And so we want to make sure that we learn and teach people how to ask meaningful questions that can help build deeper connections to not just God, but to godly people. Okay, facilitate small group interactions. I love cell groups and I love those inner faith groups where you pull people together and you group them so that they can help each other grow. Accountability groups, cohorts, Bible studies, all of these small, more intimate settings, they help to foster that authenticity and vulnerability and the meaningful dialogue that we were sharing about earlier. And then lastly, we want to emphasize engagement. We want to put together committees to think about the people that are specifically in your ministry, what you can do with those people and help them to grow in their faith and grow, professionally, grow personally, have their families grow. Those should be some of the things that you are looking to do, because when you are approaching this meaningful engagement through service and volunteering and promoting for others in your ministry to live for the benefit of others, that they see it as a mission of the apostolic church, that we are able to build these lasting connections. We promote something that actually turns things around for us, and we will begin to see a difference in not just our engagement, our attendance, our engagement, but we'll also see a difference in our attendance. Well, this has been a moment here with Red Worldwide live on co-working, and a little different today than what we always do, but we have to get an opportunity to speak to and touch all of our members. And it's so important that we are cultivating inside of Red a culture of care for everyone that has a business or a ministry or an organization or something that they're doing, so that they can know that we are helping them to do whatever it is that they're doing to do it better. So we look forward to seeing you again next time right here on Co-working Live with Red Worldwide.